right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get things underway here for the Law Amendments Committee. Tuesday, April the 19th, 2022. Continuation from last week on Bill 149, Financial Measures Act. We'll be doing in a moment. Just before we do that, we'll do Bill 154 as well as 155. However, before we do those, I'm going to run down a few of the rules here this morning. My name's Brad Johns. I am the MLA for the constituency of Sackville-Uniacke. I will be chairing this morning's meeting. Thank you very much to MLA Ritzy for chairing on Thursday. Thank you. I'm going to ask the members of the committee to identify themselves for the record. And we will start with the government side.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Melissa Sheehy-Richard, MLA from Hants West.
Good morning, Trevor Boudreau, MLA for Richmond.
Hello, good morning. I'm Kent Smith, the MLA for the Eastern Shore.
Good morning, everyone. It's Dave Ritzy, MLA for Truro, Bible Hill, Millbrook, and Salmon River.
Good morning, Ronnie LeBlanc, MLA for Clare.
Morning, Brendan McGuire, Halifax Atlantic.
Good morning, everyone. Susie Hansen, MLA for Halifax Needham.
Lisa LaChance, MLA, Halifax Citadel, Sable Island.
Thank you very much, members. And I would also like to recognize Legislative Council that's with us today, Karen Kingley and Gordon Hebb. So just before we go through these, run through a few more rules, like to remind all the members of the committee, if you have a cell phone, to please put those on vibrate. I think I got mine on. Remind everyone to please try to be respectful. I know that we don't have much of an audience with us today, but for those staff people that are in the back, I want to remind them that there's to be no yelling and screaming or making any noise. Okay, Ryan? Okay. Presenters are reminded to please not use any kind of props. If there were handouts for the committee members, they were to be passed in. Copies of all written submissions on a bill that have been received today by email up to the time when the bill is reported back to the House or in person during the Law Amendments Committee meeting will be given to the library staff, posted online. Submissions that are received after the bill has reported back to the House will be distributed electronically to LAC members but will not be posted online. I would remind everyone when they're speaking, if they choose to lower their masks, they may do so. All presenters today are required to provide notification to Legislative Office that they intended to speak. So anyone who is on the speaking list today will be from that list. When I recognize the speakers, I would ask that they please state their name for the record, as well as how they would like to be referred to, he, him, Mr., Miss, and any organizations if they represent one. I would remind that as per previous rules, the speakers at the beginning of particularly Bill 149 had 10 minutes to address the committee with 5 minutes follow-up. We have had on Bill 149 more than 8 presenters, and so as we move forward today, each presenter will have 5 minutes to present with 5 minutes of potential follow-up questions from committee members. And I believe that's it for this morning. We'll start off our agenda. Ledge TV is rolling, correct? Okay, perfect. MLA McGuire.
Thank you, MLA Johns. So something's come to our attention that there were individuals that tried to get in on this bill to speak on the Financial Measures Act, Bill number 149, and they were told that all the spaces were taken up, that there was no room, there was no more room. I'd like to ask Mr. Hebb if they have turned people away, if everybody that's wanted to speak on Bill 149 has been given the opportunity to speak on 149.
All right, thank you, MLA McGuire, and we'll come back to you on that when we get to Bill 149. I'm going to proceed with the agenda that's before us, starting off with Bill number 154, which is the Tourist Accommodations Registration Act. We have no speakers on this act, so I would look for a motion to close the public hearing. Moved by MLA Boudreau. All those in favor signify aye. Opposed? Look for a motion to refer back to the House without amendment. MLA Boudreau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Bill 154, the Tourism Accommodations Registration Act, be reported back to the House without further amendment.
Thank you. All those in favor, aye. Those opposed? Move on to Bill 155, the Public Prosecutions Act amended. We have no presentation on this one as well. Look for a motion to close public hearing. MLA Smith.
I move to close public hearing on Bill 155, the Public Prosecutions Act, amended.
Move to close public hearing. All those in favor, aye. Those opposed? Look for a motion. MLA Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Bill 155, the Public Prosecutions Act, be now moved back to the House without amendment.
Motion on the floor to return to the House with no amendment. Those in favor, aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. We'll revert back, or we'll continue on now to Bill number 149, the Financial Measures Act, and I will revert back to MLA McGuire's question to Ledge Council.
The answers, we've had about 90 people who requested, and we're hearing 12 today, and whatever the number was, we heard last day. So the others would not have been heard, no. Exact number we heard last Thursday, but 34, so 34, 12, we heard roughly half of the people that requested to appear.
Thank you, Mr. Hebb. MLA McGuire.
Thank you, MLA Johnson. So the question is, were people turned away? So everybody that asked to speak on this bill, were they given that called in, that wrote in, that requested to speak on this bill, the Financial Measures Act, the most important bill that a government will pass yearly, were they given the opportunity to come in, and were they given a time slot, to speak? Everybody that requested it.
So I believe the answer that council gave was no, not everybody who made a request to. MLA McGuire, we cut off the presentation time on Thursday. Anybody who had put in to speak up until Thursday are on the list to speak. Anyone else is requested to put a written submission in. So I'll go to MLA Lachance and then come back. MLA Lachance.
I think probably I was going to ask a couple more questions of clarification. I think, we do really need to look at the process for law amendments, and particularly making it consistent. So on another bill this session, for instance, I know someone tried to sign up on a Wednesday for a bill that was coming on the following Monday and was told no. And then, and then the sign-ups, whenever they happened, the initials came out and they weren't on it. I do think we need to have a decision about, well, we need some standardization of this committee. And I think that without that, then, you know, I don't know under what procedure or what rule the cutoff was on Thursday.
Thank you very much. Emily McGuire.
So I think there's an issue here. This is in question period, and in the Nova Scotia legislature, we hear the members across and the government across continuously talk about $13 billion, $13 billion, as if it's their own money. $13 billion is taxpayers' dollars, and the people of Nova Scotia have a right to speak on that. We've seen already this session a government that has, quite frankly, well, I mean, they went after the previous governments for tactics when it came to law amendments, whether it was calling the law amendments on short notice, which they set a new standard, which I think was 7 hours. They also said that they would be doing things differently and that they would allow everybody to have a voice heard. We do know that last week in particular was a different week. People were preparing for the long weekend. They were preparing to go see loved ones. Some people had taken vacation. The truth of the matter is that there are a lot of people that want to speak on this bill. The Financial Measures Act, which again I will say is the most important bill that governments pass. And you know, again, this is a government that has stood in that legislature and bragged about spending $13 billion. And the people in Nova Scotia have the right to speak on this, and anybody actually has the right. You know, we know that some of these people that want to speak on this bill want to speak on the new tax grab that's in this bill, which is the one on that will have a diverse, or will have a massive impact on rural Nova Scotians and the members across. Most of them are rural Nova Scotians. I use some, like New Ross, for example, which outside of cottage time, it doesn't have near the people coming in and out, and I see the members shaking their head. I spend a lot of time in New Ross, and if you ask the businesses during the summer, that's when the most people are there, and most of those people are outside of New Ross, and I just use that as an example. But you know, I think it's because of this particular piece in the Financial Measures Act that they don't want people speaking on it. And so I would ask that we look at allowing those people who are going to be tremendously impacted by the Financial Measures Act, who are going to be paying no longer hundreds of dollars, but potentially thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars annually out of their own pocket, at least give them the decency, at least show the decency and give them the respect they deserve to be heard. And anyone else that wants to speak on this bill, which I'll remind the members that that $13 billion they are spending is not their money. It's the people of Nova Scotia's money.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. McGuire. We're going to carry on with the public hearing. We do have 12 people who are waiting to present, and excuse me? We can come back at the end of, pardon? We're going to carry on with the presentations, and we can come back when we're done those. So we'll start with our first presentation. Thank you, and well, I'm not prepared to accept the amendment. I'm chairing the meeting. We're going to hear from the public hearing, and then we'll come back at the end. So we're going to start the public hearing now. MLA LaChance, I'll recognize your point of privilege.
I do believe that we have the ability to have a fulsome discussion. In the absence of rules and procedures that guide this committee, you can't just tell us we don't have a chance to come to the table. That's actually not okay. You're inhibiting my ability to do my job as an MLA.
Thank you very much for your comments, and as I said, we can come back and have a discussion about this at the end after we've heard from our presenters. So I am willing to do that, but we're going to continue forward now. So we will call our first presenter. And if members would not, if members do, Mr. McGuire, MLA McGuire, I said we can continue the conversation after we've heard. Mr. McGuire will continue forward with the presentation now. Those who do not want to stay and listen are welcome to leave. So calling our first presenter, Monica Stronach, please. MLA Hanson, I'd ask that you please get yourself under control. MLA Hanson, please get yourself under control. Members will recess for 5 minutes and then return. All right, thank you. So we have our first presenter, to which you guys all yelled and screamed. You take the 5 minute and we'll come back. I'll just, we're taking a 5-minute recess and then we'll be right back. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd ask that we turn the video or the audio off down back. I'm not quite sure if the audio is still on. All right, so we are now returning from our 5-minute break, and we'll continue on with the public hearing. We do have a number of people who are scheduled to present. There is no point of personal privilege in committee. So I will continue on now with our public hearing, and we can have a discussion at the end of this. Thank you very much, MLA McGuire, and appeals are made to the House, not to the committee. MLA McGuire, please.
So I'd like to put an appeal on the floor right now that the chair, I'm appealing the chair's motion that we can't speak, continue to debate this, and actually put amendments and motions on the floor. I realize that we have people waiting, but it's extremely important. Their voices will be heard, but we also have 50 other people that want to speak on this bill that I suspect want to say the exact same thing that the people waiting want to say, that this government has said no to. So I would like to put an appeal on the floor. I would like to appeal the speaker or the chair's that we can't continue this, that we can't continue this debate, and that we can't reopen law amendments to allow those 50 people to speak on this bill. The chair has just ruled that we can't do that, and we can't put amendments on the floor until he feels that it's best. And what you want to do is you want to put this at the end of this bill, after this bill has been spoken on and voted on, when the amendments that we want to put forward impact this bill right now. So it makes no sense to do it at the end. It makes more sense to do it in the beginning. So I'd like to appeal that with a recorded vote.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask Ledge Council if I have this correct. So the motion on the floor is to appeal the chair's ruling to continue the public hearing before hearing an amendment from a member. Is that the motion? So the amendment, MLA McGuire.
Has typically happened, historically happened in the past, we have an amendment on this bill, Bill 149, that the opposition, wait 1 second, Mr. Chair. Bill 149, we have an amendment to that bill. And as happened historically in the past, that amendment is put on the floor before the bill is discussed, before there's witnesses. I've been here for 8 years, so you can shake your head all you want. The member from Eastern Shore can shake his head all he wants. So we're asking that that amendment be put on the floor to vote, because that amendment will impact how many people have the ability to speak on this bill, if accepted or not accepted. So I'm asking that we vote on your ruling that we are not allowed to put an amendment on the floor, and that no more people are allowed to speak on this bill than what's already been put forward.
Thank you, MLA McGuire. So once again, for clarification of the committee, the amendment or the appeal is to allow amendment at this time prior to hearing the rest of the speakers that are on our list. Those in favor of the amendment, recorded vote. So I have one member requesting a recorded vote. So under that. Okay, so those in favor of the motion signify aye. Oh, sorry. Start with the government side with MLA Sheehy Richard.
No.
No.
MLA Boudreau.
No.
MLA Smith.
No.
MLA Ritchie,
No.
MLA Johns, no. MLA LeBlanc,
Yes.
MLA McGuire,
Yes.
MLA Hanson,
Yes.
and MLA LaChance.
Yes.
That's 5 noes and 4 yeses. It is defeated. We'll now carry on with our presentations. So moving on. Yes, MLA LaChance.
Can I just clarify with Ledge Council that there are no points of personal privilege in the Law Amendments Committee?
I'll go to Gordon Hebb.
No, the point of privilege would have to be raised in the House rather than at the committee.
Okay. So can I ask a question?
Sorry?
Can I ask a question? Further question? My question is then, if I have concerns, so my point of order, I suppose, is that, and perhaps Mr. Hebb, you can clarify the necessary conditions for a point of order in committee. But my point of order is that the chair is speaking over members and not recognizing them. That's my first point of order.
Okay, so carrying on, we will now go to our...
Excuse me, I've asked Mr. Hebb to advise on how I can bring forward that concern, because it is a very real concern that you are not engaging with committee members. Mr. Hebb.
I will suggest that if there are issues with the way the committee's operating, you go have a talk with the speaker and confirm the way.
Don't worry.
Yeah. So, however, I'm not recognizing it. The committee will now continue. The committee will now, I'm sorry. The committee will now continue to hear from the public. If members have an issue, please go see the speaker. Thank you. So moving on, and my apologies to our first speaker, and I'm not 100% sure if where we are on the list, if we have the correct speaker waiting to be heard, but Monica Sontrop, I'm sorry. I don't think we have Ms. Sontrop with us. We'll move on to our next speaker, who I believe is on the screen, which is Robin Nicholas.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I apologize for being late. You have, I would ask that for the record, if you could identify your name and address, as well as how you would like to be identified by committee members, and you'll have 5 minutes to present with 5 minutes to follow up. So if you could identify yourself, and then I'll start your 5 minutes.
All right, thank you. My name is Robin Nicholas. You may address me as Robin. I am currently living in the town of Blue Mountains in Ontario.
And whenever you're ready, sir.
It sounds like you're having an eventful morning. I hope to add to that. First, I'm certainly not here in support of Bill 149. This is my second attempt at a presentation. I had done a previous draft, but I suspect that many of the themes that were in my initial draft have been repeated many times prior to committee members last week. And while some repetition is good, I believe too much repetition eventually falls on deaf ears. I do wish that the committee members would put themselves in a particular perspective. Imagine, if you like, that you were, as an individual, unexpectedly faced with a tax bill plus ongoing maintenance costs, upkeep costs for a non-winterized, essentially inaccessible cottage for 5 months of the year. You were faced with a tax bill of over 10% of your gross pre-tax personal income. that would seem to be a situation that a rational individual would have many questions about. I, like many of the previous presenters, have a long history with Nova Scotia, since spending some period in the province virtually every year of my life, initially at a family cottage, which was also unwinterized and uninhabitable for 5 or 6 months of the year. 20 years ago, I took a plunge and arranged to have constructed a new cottage on land near Parsboro, Nova Scotia. The locals told me that I was foolish, that that land was unusable and worthless, and would shortly collapse into the ocean. Well, 20 years later, it's still there, not collapsing quite yet. Anyway, nevertheless, I proceeded. The cottage was never designed to be a permanent residence, and I pity the person who had to call that a permanent residence. It was designed to be a cottage, no heat, very few amenities, certainly not a full-time residence. Now, if the Bill 149 as it's currently configured passes or goes through the process, I am placed in the position of anticipating making one last trip to Nova Scotia this summer, potentially to salvage what I can from the cottage and essentially write it off, along with the province. There seems to be an urban or maybe rural myth in Nova Scotia, and I've heard it expressed directly, that those of us from outside the province, particularly Ontario, have unlimited financial resources. We're rolling in money. Let me assure you that that is simply not true. The streets are not paved with gold. In fact, some streets are not paved at all. The taxes proposed seem to be not only discriminatory, but predatory in nature. You are preying on fellow Canadians, and I hope that has some impact. And I really, truly hope the shoe never goes on the other foot. So I will ask, should I sell the cottage? Well, I've asked myself that question because I really cannot financially afford a 5-figure tax bill when all things are taken into account, plus ongoing maintenance costs, which come up expectedly or unexpectedly every year. Would I sell the cottage? And I've asked myself that question. The reality is, given the state of the local real estate market in Parsboro and rural Nova Scotia, the expected potential market or pool of buyers is extremely, extremely limited. In fact, I think could count them on less than one hand. And the proposed bill, I think, limits the pool even further. So I'm not sure that even selling is feasible, other than at a price that is purely insulting and non-negotiable.
1 minute.
All right. It would certainly be much more emotionally satisfying to me personally to simply let the building and land deteriorate and crumble, obliterating what have been exciting opportunities and fond memories of the province. I skimmed a recent article last week on the CBC website that summarized the Stats Canada study on real estate, particularly in Nova Scotia. Apparently, over a fifth of Nova Scotians own secondary property. Some of these may be investment or rental type of properties, but it was hypothesized by the study authors that many of these may be seasonal properties. In fact, the majority may be. No hard data to support that, but that was speculation. If you truly don't wish to be predatory and discriminatory against fellow Canadians, why are these seasonal dwellings owned by Nova Scotians not being
Thank you,
taxed?
sir. That's your time. And I'll now open the floor to any members of the committee who would like to ask questions for 5 minutes, starting with MLA McGuire. If you could just hang on, MLA, I'm sorry.
Thank you,
just moved
Mr.
my
Chair.
timer. MLA McGuire has the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And one of the things in all my years on law amendments I've never seen any of the witnesses be asked for their address. This is the first time, and the reason they're doing that is to undermine people's opinions, to say, well, they're not from Nova Scotia, they don't live in Nova Scotia, so their opinions don't matter. And that's exactly what's happening here. So I don't know why we're asking for people's address other than to really almost belittle them. So to Mr. Nichols, I hope I pronounced that right. Your piece of property, the government is touting this as a way to fight affordable housing, the rising costs of housing. We've heard over and over and over from individuals who have these properties that they're not probably going to be best suited for housing. So your property, I know you did a little quick description. Is this something that you think, if you were forced to sell it, would be suitable for year-round living? And also, you talked about your massive tax bill that you're about to get. If you weren't, if that money wasn't going directly into the hands of government to spend on anything they deem they should spend it on, would you be spending that money in local economies supporting local businesses? Thank you.
I'm afraid I lost track of your first question. Certainly, if the tax wasn't to the degree that it is being expressed, I would have money that I would certainly be using in the local area to support local cultural activities, restaurants, as well as maintaining the property, which is at times a significant expense. The property itself, as I said, is unheated. It is down a steep cliff. And I've been there, it is inaccessible during the winter months unless you want to hike in for half, 3/4 of a mile. As I said, I think in my presentation, I would pity the individual who had to use that as a permanent residence. It's impossible.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of committee members? I'll recognize MLA Hansen.
Thank you, Robin. I really appreciate your presentation today. I apologize as well for the late start. We are just kind of clarifying a few things. I think that's the gist of everything, clarifying a number of pieces. And I do want to say that, you know, some of us here are actually listening to the presentations and really taking into consideration what and how important this really is for those Nova Scotians who who actually own homes in Nova Scotia. So I truly appreciate your presentation today, and thank you so much. We will be talking about this in the House in the future.
Thank you, MLA Hansen. Any other questions? If not, then thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas. Thank you for your presentation today.
All right, thank you.
Moving on to our second speaker, David Richardson. David Richardson.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, thank you. You are on the Law Amendments Committee on Bill 149, Financial Measures Act. We don't have your camera on. I didn't know if you want to turn it on or not, but we don't see you, but you're welcome to just address the committee without your camera if you so choose. I would ask you for the record if you could identify your name, how you would like to be addressed by committee members, and then you'll have 5 minutes to address the committee, and the committee will have 5 minutes to follow up with any questions. So if you'd like to identify your name and how you'd like to be addressed, and any organizations if you represent any, and then we'll start you off.
My name is David Richardson. My in-season address is 58 Upper Blandford Road in Deep Cove. I was born in Detroit, but my direct ancestor landed in Port Royal, Nova Scotia in 1683.
Thank you, and you can start.
Scapegoating. Scapegoating has been used by unsavory actors from Stalin to Donald Trump. It is, unfortunately, the most central and insidious feature of the Progressive Conservatives' plan. To callously get votes, you poked a hornet's nest of anger about elite Ontarians and rich American speculators. You cultivated the minority of Nova Scotians who still resent the come from away. Congratulations on your evil genius. You then baked scapegoating into this bill's ridiculous, hypocritical design. You tax the other, but exclude Nova Scotians who own many more unoccupied homes. Of course, had you equitably taxed your own voters, you would not be sitting in your paid-for chair today. You continue to scapegoat in these hearings. You sit like bumps on a log, unmoved by gut-wrenching stories of your neighbors and compelling evidence of catastrophic nuclear economic fallout. We are not fooled. Your silence is a planned political stunt to show your angry constituents you have no sympathy for those evil speculators from outside the province. But here is the problem with your scapegoating plan. Once you let the scapegoating genie out of the bottle, you can't put it back in. Ask the people of Quebec. Ask us Americans about January 6th. The same is beginning to happen in Nova Scotia. A wonderful young Toronto couple bought a modest house in the valley to move there and start a business, and were so excited they posted a TikTok video. They got back hundreds of hateful responses from the Nova Scotians who you cultivated. To quote, "You are exactly the people we do not want in our province." Nova Scotians have vandalized U.S. cars. How long before the rocks go through our windows? You will deny you intend these consequences, but thoughtful Nova Scotian voters will pay attention not to what you say, but what you do. And what you have done is to unleash the Kraken. Unless you change course dramatically, you will not be able to control it. The true heart of Nova Scotians is not represented in Bill 149. But to the outside world, this bill represents what all Nova Scotians stand for. You will be seen as Canadian clones of American Trumpsters chanting, "Let's make Nova Scotia provincial again," with a small p. I want to cover some of the many falsehoods that your scapegoating plan is based on. One, this bill was carefully analyzed by progressive conservatives. So said MLA Susan Corkum-Greek in a letter to us. This is simply a lie. There is no analysis. There are no affordable homes in rural areas. Within 25 minutes of my house, there are 173 active listings under 350,000, 150 under 250, and many far less expensive. This measure will improve the housing stock. Most of the speakers have said they will not sell or rent. A few with multi-million-dollar properties said they would leave. Their mansions don't add to your affordable housing stock. That is, unless this bill is really about some of you finally getting that bargain in Chester. This measure will raise revenue.
1 minute left.
Residents have testified they're going to cut back on expansion. Others have testified they'll cancel millions of dollars in charitable contributions or $1 billion investment. Every penny you grab will be offset by lower economic activity. You can rent your house. Astonishingly, the PCs, led by accountant Bermuda Tim, don't understand your own tax policy. If you convert a house to full-time rental, it becomes a business property subject to 15% HST. No one's going to pay 15% to avoid 2%. You don't pay your fair share. We pay higher property taxes, and if we go to the hospital, we pay through the nose. My wife was charged $12,000 for less than 24 hours ED care. I have a related solution to your economic problems and your healthcare problem that works better than the property tax. Ask me about it.
Thank you very much for your comments. We will now go to members of the committee who may have questions, as soon as I can get this to stop. There we go. And our first member with questions, MLA McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson, for your candid response here today. I'm reading through this, I will correct a few things. You start by calling them progressive conservatives. They are not progressive, and with this tax and handling of COVID and many other things, it's become abundantly clear that this is a conservative government, not a progressive conservative government. I ask you this in all honesty. You own one property here in Nova Scotia. Do you think that that has a larger impact on affordable housing than, say, some of the MLAs on the government side who own 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 non-affordable rental properties?
I don't think so at all. On my street in Blandford, most of the homes are owned by Nova Scotians. Most of the homes are empty except for the weekends. I think there's no question that the Nova Scotians have done this to themselves.
Thank you, and I'll go to MLA Hanson now.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I really appreciate that. I'm very curious to know about those solutions. Hopefully you have, what, is it 3 minutes or 3 and some minutes left over? Could you elaborate on those solutions for us?
Sure. My guess is most MLAs don't understand how the financing of healthcare works for people outside of the province, particularly foreigners. If you get sick and go to the hospital, you are given a charge-based bill. The charges are more than you would get in any United States hospital. So for example, my wife was in for 24 hours. It was $12,000. There were no major procedures done. The solution is simple. The province, not an insurer, should offer insurance and make it mandatory for people who come to the province without insurance. It would generate millions in immediate cash flow to fund the progressive conservatives' healthcare problems, and it would also actually do a service for those of us who cannot buy affordable travel insurance to come to the province. It's a very simple thing. I'm a healthcare executive. I'd be happy to run you through the details at a later time.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? MLA McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson, for your response here today. Would you be able to email some of that information to the MLAs of Nova Scotia and with your recommendations and your suggestions on the healthcare system in particular?
Certainly, but I wouldn't know which email to use. If someone could send that to me, I'd be happy to do it.
Can we have our email sent to the witness?
Here, his is right here.
Oh, you know what? I have your email. I'll be in contact.
We will be.
We will be in contact.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation today. Have a great, wonderful rest of the day. Moving on to our next presenter, Mary Lynn McKay. Good morning. You're here to speak on Bill 149, the Financial Measures Act. And just before you start, I just have you identify your name for the record, please, how you would like committee members to address you, any organization that you may belong with. You'll then have 5 minutes to address the committee. When you have 1 minute left, I will just say one so that you know you have 1 minute left, and then members have up to 5 minutes for clarifications and questions. So if you'd like to identify your name and that for the committee, then we'll start your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman John, and thank you, fellow committee members. My name is Mary Lynn McKay. I reside in Glen Haven, Nova Scotia on St. Margaret's Bay. Please refer to me as Mary Lynn.
And you can start. Thank you.
I was born and raised and educated here in the beautiful province of Nova Scotia. After graduating from Dalhousie University, married, moved on in 1980 for career opportunities that unfortunately were not available to me at the time here in Nova Scotia. My career was in the private sector, owning my own seasonal business in Ottawa. Plus, I held many senior positions in Ottawa for over 25 years. And most of the seasonal business was in the tourism sector. I raised a family there as well. Although working away from Nova Scotia, as a family, we came back regularly every year, always dreaming and planning to return full time. My personal life took me to Europe for a brief moment in 2007, where I held the position as president of an international philanthropic women's organization supporting the safety and education and promotion of women and children. After these years abroad, finally was able to have a chance to come home full time in 2010. Upon arrival, I took on a brief role as the manager of the former old YMCA in South Park Street. When the plans for the new building were underway, I took some time and helped broker business-to-business relationships on behalf of John Lindsay Jr. to build the first foundational dollars to building of the present new Y. The next steps, I started to embrace the arts and culture and tourism of Nova Scotia and became the former president, vice president of what is now the most successful festival in St. Margaret's Bay called the Peggy's Cove Area Festival of the Arts. I'm still an active member today, and you'll find me painting regularly in Peggy's Cove since 2014. I've witnessed the growth of tourism up until the pandemic decline in 2020 due to COVID. Now in 2022, I can feel the new surge of interest and people starting to visit. All the come back from aways are returning to see Nova Scotia and to visit. My point today is focusing on Maritimers who are born and may have moved only due to their careers, but are continually coming back, possibly buying a seasonal place for generations to share their love with their friends and family. I have witnessed many non-residents and former Maritimers who have embraced our beautiful province, and they support its economic growth tenfold. Six-figure donations I have witnessed to universities like Dalhousie and Spew, scholarship foundations built by many people I know who are coming back and moving here, charitable donations, many to local clubs. Some of them are for continual education, and some of them are supporting athletes that we have in this province and giving them a chance on a world-class stage. I've seen several multi-donations to hospitals, continuing building extensions on local schools, and furthering the education of our youth. Beyond this, and this is truly what I've witnessed over the years, it's continual support of the trades and some of the commercial businesses. And many of the restaurants and local business owners count on these visitors and these people who have invested in properties here to sustain their business. I really do not believe that there's been a true evaluation on this new proposed tax game that would outweigh what the investment value is for these people that have come here. We have seen what's happened when COVID put restrictions on commercial enterprises, restaurants, and tourism destinations. Business suffered on an economical downfall. We're on the cusp of a renewal of interest, confidence in the coming home to Nova Scotia. 2022 feels promising in the tourism sector and is waiting to be revived. Our population just surpassed 1 million, which our new provincial government states is a proud moment. And they want to support counting on this growth. Yet this new potential tax bill is punitive. I come from a large multi-generational family of Nova Scotians who love their birthplace. Many have moved only due to careers, but continually make efforts to be here, live here, and invest in here, even if it's only part-time. We have bought investments and excitement to Nova Scotia as a welcoming and beautiful place. This bill is going to destroy the level and love of this investment. Years ago, we encouraged everyone to come home. It was a comment often seen on surveys how welcoming our province is. One size does not fit all. Cancel this potential idea, or if necessary, at least grandfather it. Many owners are not speculators. They're not trying to flip houses. For one quick example, my brother, who has a small, non-winterized cottage, will possibly have a $15,000 increase in his taxes, and that is so unaffordable. It's almost like paying rent on something that he's worked very hard to come back home to or to share with his friends and family. I also don't understand why I know so many Nova Scotians who have second and third summer homes just down the shore, and they're not facing this financial burden. It's not a welcoming experience. When you arrive at the airport, it's like emptying out your pockets to pay for something that's not necessary. I do not agree with this bill. If anything,
thank you for your comments at your time. Thank you very much. I will now go to members of the committee for questions, starting with MLA McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mary Lynn, for that thoughtful presentation. This is exactly what happens when there is no financial analyst and there's no consultation. One of the things we've said to this government is a lot of people had to move away from Nova Scotia, particularly in the trades field, and they've gone to Alberta. They've gone to Fort Mac to work, to support a family. Some of them moved away young and are looking to move back, and some of them have purchased property so that they can move back home after they're done in their chosen field. Those people, if we want to talk about, and this is what's happening here today, and this is what this is all about, is penalizing the non-Nova Scotians. And what's happened here, if we want to just strictly talk about Nova Scotians and non-Nova Scotians, they're penalizing everybody. So I've had lots of people reach out to me to say, like, hey, I bought a piece of land or I bought a home that I'm going to come back to in a year or so, and now I'm getting penalized. So you know what? Maybe I'm not coming home anymore. I've just spent the last 15, 20, 25 years in Alberta, and now they're being punitive toward me. Do you see this as hindering people wanting to move back home? I know you talked about having to move away, not because you wanted to, but because you had to in your chosen profession. Do you see this as a deterrent for people that want to move home? And is it penalizing people that can't find that job here in Nova Scotia that they've spent, some of them tens of thousands of dollars to educate themselves on?
Absolutely. You summarized that very, very well. Many, many people, I come from a large family of 11 people, and the majority, almost 80% of us all had to leave. And a majority of us have all moved back home at some point or time, have been fortunate in careers and have achieved much, but they've taken that money and invested it in education and scholarships at universities, in a lot of charitable things and volunteering right in the community. Did we have to leave because of careers? And during the late 70s and early 80s, certain opportunities just were not available in Nova Scotia. And I've seen that just in the past generation after me that have gone to places like Alberta or up north, or even some of my friends who were teachers could not find a teaching position here many years ago. I know things are starting to change, but they should not be penalized for the reasons for them to find and achieve their careers and then bring the money back home. So many of them bring their money back home here.
Thank you. MLA Lachance.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and it definitely really spoke to me. So, I mean, just quickly, you know, my partner and I finished our master's degrees at Dell, and we moved away for work. And that planning and dreaming that you spoke of is what we definitely did. And we came home sooner than all of our maritime or expat friends in Ottawa for various reasons. But I would have seen us being those folks who wanted, you know, a little cabin somewhere or something, not just to have a cabin, not just to have a second home, but really to be part of Nova Scotia, because I don't think we ever stopped being part of Nova Scotia no matter where we went for work. So I'm wondering how you think this will affect that group of maritime or expats going forward in terms of their decision making and that sort of thing.
Based on the buzz within my immediate family and extended relations, who majority have all moved into this direction, a lot of them are seriously considering selling their properties. And it makes them feel extremely unwelcome, and they've loved being here. They're so torn, it's emotionally very, very torn, but they find this tax bill extremely punitive. And to have invested many decades of time, money, and interest in their province to only turn around and feel like in their later years, the retiring years, they cannot come back home, a dream that they've been working on, in some cases, 20 plus years. And so, yes, the buzz is, and I don't like it at all, because I'm going to start losing this lovely community of family that have been with us for generations and wanting to pass it down to future generations. We have let all the next generation and grandchildren fall in love and they love being here, and they love being educated here.
Thank you. That's time. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your comments to the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this time. Appreciate it.
Moving on now to our next speaker is Linda Bottoms. Is our next speaker here?
Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for thank you. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine, thank you.
So I welcome this morning. I would like you to, if you could, identify your name for committee, as well as how you would like the committee to address you, any organizations, if you represent any, and then you'll have 5 minutes to address the committee. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left by just saying one, and then you'll have 5 minutes follow-up from questions of committee. So if you could just identify yourself, and then you can start.
Thank you. My name is Linda Bottoms, and you can refer to me as Linda, and I'm a permanent resident of Ontario with a house in Mahone Bay.
And you can start. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to present to you today. By way of background, while my spouse and I reside in Toronto, my spouse was born in Bridgewater and his parents have lived in Mahone Bay for more than 30 years. My family visits Nova Scotia 3 to 4 times a year, often for extended periods in the summer. And over the years, our 2 daughters have participated in local sport and community activities and developed many friendships. They consider Mahone Bay a second home, and we are very, very proud to say that they now both attend Dalhousie University. We contribute to the Mahone Island Conservation Authority, Coastal Action, and to the Mahone Bay Center. And last year, we were delighted to make a significant contribution to 2 Syrian families settling in the South Shore. We have family and friends in town, and we feel very connected to Mahone Bay and to Nova Scotia. Last year, we finally decided to purchase a house in Mahone Bay. Of note, the property failed to sell on 3 previous occasions when listed. It's a big property with over an acre of land. The house is quite large and was in need of significant repair. And the house also had a legal apartment in the basement. Not everybody wants to be a landlord, but for us, we saw the apartment as an option where elderly parents might be able to live, if needed, with us close by to support our family. In the meantime, it could be rented until needed by our family. We did proceed to renovate the house last year and hope to finish in July. All of our trades were local, and most of the materials for the renovation were purchased locally in Lunenburg County. We were shocked and dismayed when we heard about the proposed non-resident tax. It was even more upsetting to hear the Minister of Finance state that the benefit of the proposed tax, quote, remains to be seen, and that, quote, there's no way to concretely know for sure until it's implemented. While the government makes the blind assumption that affordable housing will suddenly materialize, we believe it will instead hurt other sectors, tourism and local business, to which seasonal property owners contribute immensely. I can use my own situation as an example of how this tax will do the exact opposite of what you hope to achieve. We can either rent our 1-bedroom apartment or list it as an Airbnb until needed by our family. In a small community like Mahone Bay, we cannot generate enough long-term rental income to cover a tripling of our property taxes. We do not qualify for an exemption because we have 2 units, not 4, so we have no choice but to list the apartment as an Airbnb. This seems to be the exact opposite of what you hope to achieve with this tax. We're also concerned that the proposed tax will do little to directly benefit Mahone Bay or other small communities. The revenues from the tax appear to be designated for a general consolidated fund with no explanation about if or how local communities will be better able to address local housing issues. Not only does this levy take money away from part-time residents, but businesses and other local organizations will be negatively impacted, as owners like myself redirect or reduce our spending within these communities. My family will certainly reconsider where and how we spend our money this summer. Finally, I'd like to offer an alternative approach to the proposed non-resident tax. Exempt pre-existing homeowners or those with family ties to the province. My family did not plan for this financially, and had we known about this tax, we would never have purchased a house at this price point and in this condition. Grandfather pre-existing homeowners and at least make the task realistic, say 0.5%, similar to what other provinces have done. People can then make a choice about whether to come here seasonally or not. In closing, while my spouse and I are only in the province 5 months out of the year, we have had family ties in Nova Scotia for decades. We also spend a considerable amount of money in Nova Scotia when we are there. We consider ourselves part-time residents and great advocates for all things Nova Scotia. As the Minister of Finance is choosing to speculate about the success of the non-resident property tax, I'd like to do the same thing. I believe the proposed levy will damage Nova Scotia's image as a welcoming province. It will damage the tourist economy. It will damage local business, and it will do little to address housing affordability. And more so, it will isolate many families with deep ties to the province. For our own aging parents, they will lose the benefit of having a place to live.
That's time. Thank you. I will now go to members of the committee for questions, starting with MLA McGuire.
Thank you for the presentation. I think one of the things that, one of the reasons why we're not hearing from the government side in particular is, you know, most of them, this won't impact them. We have members across from Truro and Eastern Shore and places like that, and this isn't going to impact their community. So I think a lot of these presentations are falling on, you know, they're just falling like a rock, like they're just not listening, and it's unfortunate. You did make a really good point, and these are the unintended consequences that not consulting has brought up, and that being, you know, you're somebody who rents the property. So in order to recoup or even break even, let's say, to break even on this, you talked about Airbnb-ing, but do you foresee people who rent those properties going from affordable properties to rent to, you know, double and tripling their rent because they have to pay the property taxes, which will have a direct impact on Nova Scotians?
Well, I mean, I certainly listened to presentations last week and to presentations this morning, and you're hearing a lot from, you know, people in small rural communities. And the thing you have to remember is certainly what we've been considering is, if you're looking to address affordable housing in Nova Scotia, the assumption is that somehow I will either sell my property or I will no longer use my property for personal purposes and will put it for rent. Well, in rural Nova Scotia and in smaller communities, there's a cap at which you can generate rental income. So I look at this and say, you know, speaking with property management companies locally who have come to my house and who I've had conversations with, tell me that, listen, for a one-bedroom apartment in Mahone Bay, you can rent it out long-term for maximum $1,200 a month. Well, that does not cover, you know, a tripling of my property taxes, which will be over $13,000 a year. So I suspect there are other people in the same situation who are sitting back saying, you know, what do I do with this? Do I rent this out? Well, there's no point, because you can't ask people to charge, I don't even know, $2,000 a month for rent in, you know, small communities outside of the Halifax area. It's just completely, it's impossible.
Thank you, and I'll go to MLA Lachance now.
You spoke about, thank you for your presentation, you spoke about, if you had known, you wouldn't have purchased this property. And I guess I'm wondering, obviously this is all speculation, like you noted, including the potential financial revenue. But if you were to speculate on what you would have done differently with this tax in place, can you share that with us?
Well, I think we would definitely have hesitated to purchase a property in the first place. It's many of these properties that people are talking about. It sounds like they're seasonal, or having rented in Halifax as well. Many properties are very old, very dated, and require a lot of money to update. And we were just very fortunate to be in a position to come buy a house and put the money in to bring our property kind of up to date and up to code. And, many, even if you look at it from an affordability perspective, these houses can come on the market, but seasonal properties that do not have year-round access or heat, all of the things that you've heard from other presenters, they're going to take a lot of money in order to renovate these and, have those properties be in a position to be available to people looking to buy. And I just don't know how realistic that is if you're looking at from the lens of affordable housing. And, I look at this as well from somebody who has worked in government. I have helped with creating policies. I've written memorandum to cabinet. I've done Treasury Board submissions. You don't implement policy on a wing and a prayer. You do the homework. You do the research.
Thank you very much. That's your time. I appreciate you presenting. Thank you so very much. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Moving on now to our next presenter, Robert Bishop. Hi, are you there? Robert Bishop? Hi. Good morning. You are here to speak on Bill 149, the Financial Measures Act. And if I could have you state your name and how you would like to be addressed, as well as any organizations that you may belong to or be representing. And once you're done that, we'll turn things over. We'll allow 5 minutes to address the committee. I'll advise when you have 1 minute left in your presentation by saying 1, and then we will allow committee members 5 minutes for questions. So if you would just identify yourself for the record, please.
Yes, good morning. It's Robert Bishop, and you can refer to me as Bob. I will say the 5 minutes is a tight time. I will try to get through my material, and I invite you to follow up with me on kind of the path forward from where we are today in the follow-up period after.
Okay, and you can start. Thank you.
Great. I'll be as brief as possible, touching on the points most important to me, and as I say, invite you to follow up with questions afterwards. I have concerns and suggestions. I completely recognize the very real housing crisis in Nova Scotia. I was born and brought up in the Annapolis Valley, where the Bishop family planted roots in 1760. Over a span of 50 plus years, my work took me from Kentville to Halifax, to Fredericton, and ultimately to Ontario. Throughout, I have maintained strong ties to the province and have continuously owned property. Currently, my wife and I own a 390 square foot cabin near Blandford. We value our family ties and friendships in the province, and we spend as much time as possible at our favorite little spot. We are not non-residents, we are part-time residents. Today, we have a government taking action against citizens in a legislature where the citizens are not directly represented. Legislators, particularly in the official opposition, must step up to ensure this legislation is subject to rigorous scrutiny, even though those harmed by it are not able to cast a vote in the provincial elections. The principles of natural justice demand that legislators hear the views of those affected and consider them without bias. And I do appreciate the opportunity to be heard today. We are all citizens of Canada, free to move and work throughout the land. And I certainly do not question the province's right to impose taxes, as long as that imposition is fair and reasonable and not a capricious or arbitrary act. The non-resident taxes were part of the PC Party's platform, I acknowledge that, but that does not alter the fact that the measures in Bill 149 are clearly arbitrary, as dictated to the Minister of Finance in the Premier's mandate letter of September 14th. To my knowledge, there was no publicly disclosed research supporting the measures or detailing the extent of the problem needing to be solved, and certainly nothing on the desired objectives or other consequences. In an interview following the budget, the minister spoke words to the effect of, "We had to do something." The clear implication was he did not know what that something ought to be. We would have to wait and see how it turned out, to paraphrase him. Like you, I celebrated Nova Scotia reaching the milestone of 1 million population a few months ago. Now the objective is 2 million. And indeed, why not? Let's look at the dynamics of getting some of those people to Nova Scotia. Jill Balser, in her mandate letter from the Premier, was directed thus: as Minister of Labour, Skills and Immigration, you will focus on attracting key groups and attracting them to rural areas of our province. So here's the Premier's list. People who grew up in Nova Scotia and would now consider moving home. That's me. Current and former students who attend or attended university or college in the province, fell in love with the place. This is my 17-year-old son who is about to decide where to attend university. Individuals who love the outdoors and have always dreamed of living a more laid-back lifestyle close to the ocean. Check, that's us. People who have visited Nova Scotia as tourists. That's us too. Unlike the folks who fly in for a week at an Airbnb or drop in for a day on a cruise ship, we are in the province for extended periods year after year. The people one minister is being tasked with attracting are among those targeted by the finance minister's punitive measures in Bill 149.
1 minute.
Using and maintaining our Nova Scotia property is by far our family's largest discretionary expenditure. Dollars earned in Ontario, all spent now in Nova Scotia. Our property taxes will triple. How would any of you deal with that kind of financial bomb with the price of everything going up? It's not like I'm thinking about buying a property in Nova Scotia and my enthusiasm will bid up the prices. A buyer faced with this big tax penalty would just walk away, not make the purchase. But I bought this property 18 years ago. Now I'm faced with an unaffordable penalty I can only avoid by selling. And who's going to buy it? Non-residents will vanish from the market. It could take a long time to sell, and all the while I must pay a tax I cannot afford. If I pay the tax, I can't afford to use the property.
Time. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. I recognize we have questions from the committee. You'll have 5 minutes. I recognize MLA McGuire.
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chair. I would like to put a motion on the floor. Time and time again, we're hearing from witnesses that they don't have time to complete what they want to say. In fact, I think every single witness that we've had here today has been cut off. And I think it's important that if we're going to be taking their money, we should at least be listening to their words. So I am putting a motion on the floor, and that motion be that we extend we give the courtesy of the witnesses who are taking time out of their day. We give them an extra 2 minutes, let's say. We'll go from 5 to 7 minutes. And we'll start with it from there, I guess, and we'll go to 7 minutes, and we'll allow them 7 minutes to speak and 5 minutes for follow-up questions. So, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair, that's my motion, and it's on the floor.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to add an additional 2 minutes to allow presentations an additional 2 minutes. All those in favor? We've been requested to have a recorded vote on this. We'll start with MLA Sheehy Richard.
No.
MLA Boudreau.
No.
MLA Smith.
No.
MLA Ritzy.
No.
MLA Johns. No. MLA LeBlanc.
Yes.
MLA McGuire.
Yes.
MLA Hanson.
Yes.
MLA LaChance.
Yes.
5 against, 4. So we will continue on. We still have 3 minutes left of questions for the speaker. Do we have any other questions of the speaker? Just if you could. You have a question of the speaker? MLA McGuire.
So that was actually committee business, so I asked that the speaker be given the 5 minutes to speak. That wasn't a question to the speaker. That was an actual committee business that was done. So if we could reset the clock to 5 minutes and allow Mr. Bishop the courtesy of the 5 minutes, that'd be great.
Do we have any questions of Mr. Bishop? MLA LaChance. Mr. Bishop, I'll reset your time to 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. As I shared with others this morning, as a former Nova Scotia expat, I definitely understand or appreciate your situation and your story. So in terms of other, with this tax, how do you think that will affect your family going forward?
Well, it's I have to say that Nova Scotia is the foundation of our family heritage, and as a father and as a husband, proud Nova Scotian, I had dreamed of making that a foundation into the future, and I'm really not prepared for the heartbreak that looms as a result of this. I mean, the choices are quite stark. I'm not rolling in dough, and yeah, we could probably find a way to find the money, but then we'll end up not using it as much because we just can't afford the travel to get there and so on. So it's the thing that really hits me with this is it feels like a trap. There's no way out, as I mentioned in my presentation. I mean, if we can't afford it, we can't afford to pay the taxes, then we have to get rid of it. The market will be depressed by this action, so we'll be less likely to be able to sell it, possibly having to sell it at a loss. All the while waiting for it to sell, we have to pay the tax on it, and you can see that's a road without a happy ending for sure. So I do not want to go there.
Thank you.
That's how it hit us.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation today. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
If I just may.
No, thank you very much for your time this morning. Moving on to our next presenter, Mr. Paul Hughes. Mr. Hughes, Paul Hughes. Paul Hughes. There we go. Good morning. Thank you for joining us this morning. Just before we start, I will have you identify your name as well as how you would like to be addressed by committee members for the record, any organizations if you represent any. You will then have 5 minutes to present to the committee. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left by just saying one, and then members have up to 5 minutes to ask questions. So if you would start with identifying yourself, and then we'll start you off with your timer.
Good morning. My name is Paul Hughes. I'm calling today from Lunenburg County. You can call me Mr. Hughes or Paul.
And your time starts now.
Thank you to the committee for hearing me today. Like all the folks that have appeared before me, I'm here to speak to some of the many issues that exist with the non-resident taxes proposed in Bill 149. I look forward to a spirited 10 minutes and will say that I hope the level of participation from the conservative members of the committee today mirrors that of their friends across the aisle and goes beyond saying no or admonishing speakers for certain things that may have been said. As I said, my name is Paul Hughes of Lunenburg County. I come to you today by way of Dalhousie University, Halifax West High School, Clayton Park Junior High, Rockingham Elementary, Mount St. Vincent University Preschool, the IWK Hospital Maternity Ward, and by way of my Nova Scotian parents, both of whom serve as public school teachers in the province for their entire working lives and live around the corner from me from my cabin in rugged, rural, beautiful Nova Scotia. I hope this brief snapshot of my background has been sufficient to establish my credentials as a Nova Scotian, which seems to be the prerequisite for permission to plead for mercy from these proposed non-resident taxes. This is shameful. We cannot be a province whose tagline is locals only, that looks to shake down anyone who cannot establish that they grew up on our block. As a Nova Scotian, I am saddened to see our province drag fellow Canadians through this process as though they are the other. In any event, I'd be quite pleased if the current government were to show some mercy to the Canadian sons and daughters of Nova Scotia, rather than pushing through this punitive, ill-conceived set of taxes, but I won't hold my breath. So if not because I am, quote, one of your own, as it was put by the Honorable Susan Corkin-Greek, MLA from Lunenburg, when describing who these taxes are being put in place to protect, then why else should you amend Bill 149 to strike the application of the non-resident taxes on Canadian citizens? First, they are entirely inconsistent with the federalist principles that govern our country, both in terms of spirit and as specifically enshrined in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This proposed treatment of Canadians from other provinces as the other through this tax is contrary to the bedrock of what it means to be Canadian. Freedom of movement within our own country is so important to us as Canadians, in fact, that we have enshrined it in our charter. Section 6 of the charter says that Canadians, and I'll paraphrase, shall have the right to move and live freely about the country, regardless of their principal province of residence. These taxes clearly violate this principle in that they interfere significantly with Canadians' ability to make a home in Nova Scotia on equal footing with those that are lucky enough to be able to live here year-round. Excuse me. The Canadian ethos, as crystallized in the Charter, requires that the proposed non-resident taxes on Canadian citizens and permanent residents be struck out. You will hear more from Council on this later this morning. Moving now to a second reason for the proposed taxes to be struck. Ordinary action requires ordinary justification. Extraordinary action requires extraordinary justification. In this case, we clearly have extraordinary action on the part of Nova Scotia and its government. Nova Scotia is truly peerless in seeking to impose such significant taxes on Canadian property owners. However, not only has no extraordinary evidence been provided to justify this wacky outlier of a policy, we haven't even been provided with the most ordinary of justifications for what is being proposed. Nothing to demonstrate that these taxes are likely or even capable of having any meaningful impact at all on the availability of affordable year-round residences for full-time Nova Scotians has been provided. In fact, To take it one step further, a 2001 study by a task force commissioned by the PC government of Nova Scotia entitled Non-Resident Property Ownership in Nova Scotia reviewed the issue and then proposed non-resident taxes and recommended against proposing them, a recommendation which the then government wisely heeded. To quote from this report, quote, "The task force has not altered its position on the question of an extraordinary property tax on non-resident landowners. As stated before, we agree unanimously that the government should not pursue this option, as it would neither fully, fairly, nor directly adequately address the real issues of overall land stewardship raised by Nova Scotians. Accordingly, we advise the provincial government to repeal measures within Bill 42 that provide for the non-resident tax. Future governments, if they so chose, should have to bring such measures before the people, not simply proclaim a bill already on the books." I'm going to skip ahead in the interest of time. I'd like to highlight a situation that I believe many people that are like me are in. I cannot afford to stay. I'm not a rich person. I'm a person that borrowed the tens of thousands of dollars I needed to go to law school, paid it back over a decade working in a world of concrete and glass, and I'm now in the process of building a career in life. I do not have $10,000 to $20,000 a year to casually donate to the general coffers of the Nova Scotia government for no justifiable reason. I cannot afford to stay, but I cannot afford to go. I cannot afford to sell. Although I spent...
Time. Thank you very much for your comments. I will now go to members of the committee who may have questions. If not, we thank you very much for your comments. And MLA Hanson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We have all agreed that we will give the additional 5 minutes of questioning to your presentation, Mr. Hughes, so continue on.
Sorry, that's not the rules. The rules are 5 minutes of questions. And so if there are no questions...
I'm sure the question could be, well, how would I finish off my presentation?
If there... MLA...
Or is there anything else I'd like to say?
Tilley, thank you. MLA Tilley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hughes. My question would be to you, do you have anything further that you would like to add on this topic to put forward to the committee? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Finally, I'd like to raise a few questions and items on behalf of people in situations similar to my own. We have returned recently to Nova Scotia, live our lives between a couple of places, largely for professional reasons, but have committed to long-term roots in Nova Scotia by buying homes here, largely in rural areas. For a myriad of reasons related to the needs of our employers or our young children or our spouses in other parts of the country, we are unable to live here full-time right now, hopefully one day. But we are here. We have put our trust and our money, often borrowed money, into this province, and we deserve to be considered. Many I have talked to feel trapped by these new taxes. We feel unable to stay, and we feel unable to go. As I said, I cannot afford to stay. I cannot afford these new taxes, particularly at a time when I'm looking to grow my young professional life and young family. I can't afford to stay, but I can't afford to go. I can't afford to sell. Although I spent the first 22 years of my life here, I'm only a year and a half into a fresh 25-year mortgage, which, by the way, just saw a 50 basis point increase thanks to the Bank of Canada, a measure which I accept is far more likely to have positive impact on housing prices than what is proposed here. I digress. Your proposed taxes will certainly tank the value of all existing real estate in the province, having effectively excluded the vast majority of the purchasing population from the buyer's pool. If I sell now after this new tax passes, I expect I will be hundreds of thousands of dollars underwater, owing more to the bank than the selling price of my property, to say nothing of the loss of the down payment that I spent years saving for. So I cannot afford to go. I cannot bankrupt myself. I cannot rent. I own a one-bedroom cabin at the top of an unplowed, unserviced gravel driveway. There are fields in front of me and fields behind me. There is no garbage pickup, no mail delivery. If you want a cab, you order days in advance. I am 2 hours from Halifax and 25 minutes from the nearest grocery store. This is not a suitable year-round home, and particularly not a year-round home for the skilled, urban-focused workers that our province is understandably looking to attract and accommodate. The only Nova Scotian resident that would rent here on a 12-month term would likely be someone that wants to use it seasonally. And I can't imagine your taxes are designed to make summer cottages more affordable for Nova Scotians. So who am I supposed to rent to? I cannot rent. I would ask the committee, what do I do here? What would you do? What should people like me with mid-career and with mortgages do? And perhaps if you cannot come up with a good answer for me, then that is an answer in itself. As a final note, I will also share that there is a large and growing group of Canadians, resident and non-resident Nova Scotians, that will not stand for these taxes should they be pushed through. We are organized, we are highly motivated, and we are doggedly committed to resisting these measures as may be necessary politically, in the public sphere, and if needed through the courts. We will not accept this fenced-off version of Nova Scotia that you propose. We are all Canadians and are in it together, come what may. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. Do we have any questions of the other committees? With 2 minutes left to go, I would take the opportunity right now to recognize MLA Tilley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Hughes, for your great presentation. I was very interested in what you said around the charter, the Canadian Charter. Just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on your research into the being Canadian and being able to move freely amongst the provinces for us.
Thank you for your question. This is as soon as I saw these, new proposed taxes come through, I immediately jumped to, how they reflect on our ethos as Canadians, and that ethos as enshrined in the Charter, and whether these new proposed taxes, violate the provisions set out in the Charter. In my view, and in the view of council that we've engaged, who we will hear from later this morning, these new tax laws violate Section 6 of the Charter that set out the mobility rights of Canadians, and they violate Section 15 of the Charter, which set out the rights to, live in Canada free from discrimination. And again, I believe a letter on this matter has been provided to the committee, and council will be before you shortly to speak to it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your comments today, and have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on to our next presenter, Michael Sullivan. Michael Sullivan.
Good morning.
Welcome to Law Amendments Committee. We can't see you, but that's okay. We can hear you. If you would like to identify yourself for the record, your name, as well as you would like to be addressed by the committee, and any organizations if you represent any. Once you've completed that, you'll have 5 minutes to address the committee. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left. I'll just say one into the microphone. And then you have up to 5 minutes for questions of committee members. So whenever you want to identify yourself, we're all set.
Okay. My name is Michael Sullivan. I live in Ottawa and in Martins River, Nova Scotia. You can call me Michael. And I'm representing myself as an individual this morning.
And your time starts now.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this important democratic process. I also want to express my solidarity with everyone who is suffering on the 2-year anniversary of the Portapique tragedy. I'm from Halifax. My wife is from St. John. Our roots in the Maritimes are measured in centuries. We both worked as economists for the federal government. We've returned to Nova Scotia every year, and also to New Brunswick, usually with our kids, for 40 years to be with friends and family, to be home. In 2008, we bought a small plot in Martins River, as did my closest childhood friends from Halifax. In 2014, using a local architect, local contractors and suppliers, we built. Pre-COVID, we visited each season. Yes, even in the winter. I could see my elderly parents more regularly. My father has since passed. Mom lives in Halifax. She's 86. 2 of my brothers, my sister, and aunts also live in Halifax. We poured money into Nova Scotia when the real estate market was a dog. We are not speculators, Airbnb moguls, or interested in becoming absentee landlords. It took 15 years for the 12 lots in our development to find buyers. Forcing us to choose between paying a 300% increase unless we rent or sell is unworthy of Nova Scotia. Investing in Nova Scotia should not be like investing in a third world country where non-citizens have no protection from arbitrary laws. We would have chosen New Brunswick over Nova Scotia if these tax measures were in place in 2008. The retroactive nature of the proposals, particularly the tax increase, is very unfair. Bill 149 has detailed tax avoidance provisions and penalties, demonstrating that a great deal of forethought has gone into maximizing tax revenues from non-voters, but much less thought has gone into its drawbacks. Already, construction projects in Lunenburg and Pictou counties are being put on hold. Last week, Rhyolite Resources, a multinational mining company based in Toronto, led by a native Nova Scotian, canceled a multi-million-dollar plan to build mining equipment in Lunenburg. This project would have created 100 jobs plus housing. The CEO wrote to Minister Corkum Green that his decision was based on how these tax proposals will treat the Nova Scotia diaspora. It's early days, and there'll be more cancellations. In December 2001, when John Hamm was Premier, the Voluntary Planning Board issued a report on non-resident land use. It was based on public consultations and careful study, and it's still relevant today. It contains a unanimous recommendation against imposing special taxes on non-residents. It stresses the reputational and economic risks of such policies to the province. Every MLA should read this report before the bill goes to third reading. It's a real page turner. I'm not minimizing the housing crisis. The crisis is not unique to Nova Scotia. What is unique is the misguided approach. So I'm asking the government to do three things. One, axe these proposals. Two, take into account that the federal government and the Bank of Canada are cooling the national housing market. The government of Nova Scotia can use alternatives to increase the supply of housing by reducing property speculation and short-term rentals. As you know, most of this activity is concentrated in the HRM. If the government insists on going ahead, be more fair and moderate. Grandfathering existing property owners would make it less unfair. Significantly lowering the increase would make it less punitive. Not long after the 2001 report that I mentioned earlier was issued, Premier Hamm reversed course and withdrew legislation that would have allowed municipalities to impose special taxes on non-residents. The Houston government should also reverse course, just as John Hamm did 20 years ago. Premier Houston, you're a man of considerable education and international business experience. You know that this will ultimately hurt the province. Business leaders and folks from all walks of life have been telling you this for months. Exercise your leadership and resist the populist impulses of Minister McMaster and Corkum Greek. They paint non-residents as bogeymen and barriers to economic progress. You know that is not true. These tax proposals are not worthy of Nova Scotia.
Your comments with 14 seconds left. That was good. I'll go now to committee members for 5 minutes of questions, starting with MLA Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Michael, thank you very much for your time this morning and for your written submission as well, which we have in front of us. And just wanted to thank you for also mentioning the report there from 2001, which I did have a chance to look at yesterday a little bit, and then today as well. I just wanted to read one sentence in it that I'm sure you're familiar with. It says, proposals which would have us endorse legislation which singles out non-residents in the absence of any professional study, which is of course the case here. The minister has not given any supporting studies as to why this will work. Relative to the positive impact these investors have on our overall and individual economic well-being, is neither judicious nor prudent at this time, which is a very nice way of saying it's a bad idea. So I just wanted to get that on the record, and I think it's as relevant now as it was 21 years ago. But I also wanted, if you could, Michael, to just reiterate perhaps what you were talking about with the development in the Lunenburg area. I just wanted to make sure I had the details there right, because it sounds like a real, tangible impact very quickly based on this proposal. Thank you.
I have firsthand information. I've been given clearance to release this information publicly. by executives in the company. Fred Stanford is the CEO of the company. I believe he's from Lunenburg. He went to tons. He has 40 years in the mining industries, led some very big companies. He canceled the project last week. He wrote a letter to Matt Risser and to Susan Corkin-Greek, basically saying that he couldn't abide by the treatment of the Nova Scotia diaspora, which I'm part of, by the way. I went to St. Mary's just like the premier, saying that he's not going to go ahead with this project. He had trouble convincing his investors to invest in Nova Scotia in the first place, and this kind of was the kiss of death. So, to me, it's a terrible outcome. And there's going to be more. I'm seeing things on Facebook where people are canceling their construction plans. Minister Corkin-Greek is totally unsympathetic towards people like myself and others. Frankly, her comments are repugnant. Her treatment of people like myself who had to move away for jobs and back in the 1980s when things were rough. So she exhibits no sympathy or empathy towards people like myself who've worked hard and saved money, borrowed money to build their dream vacation home in Nova Scotia. So, and for me personally, this comes at a big cost. I really don't know what to do at this moment. We can hang in for a year or so, but my great concern is that my taxes will continue to increase at an ever accelerating rate. My assessment's uncapped. So in 10 years, I could be paying $30,000 or more in property taxes. It's just not, it's unviable for us to stay there under these conditions.
Thank you very much for your comments today, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have one other question. I will recognize MLA Tilley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Michael, for your presentation. It was well thought out and well put together, and very concerning, of course, for Nova Scotians who, like you, have had to move for work or for other reasons, but still want to maintain that connection to home and connection to family and connection to the province where you grew up and lived. So I guess my question is more along a personal nature. Given the fact that Nova Scotia is your home and you have great ties here, how does this make you feel about the future of Nova Scotia and the place that you grew up?
Well, it's very distressing, actually. I mean, I always consider myself a Nova Scotian, even though I've lived and worked in Ontario for a long time. But, I have traveled all across this country and around the world for work and for pleasure. But where I really want to be, particularly in the summertime, is in Nova Scotia. Where I can see my family. My best friend lives right next door to me in our development. So. Yeah, it means a lot, but it also it concerns me. This kind of
that's time. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next presenter, Jim Bunting. Good day, sir. I will ask if you could please identify to the committee your name, as well as you would like to be addressed, how you would like the committee to address you, and any organizations that you may be here representing. You'll then have 5 minutes to address the committee. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left just by saying one into the microphone. And committee members will have up to 5 minutes for questions if they so choose. So I'll let you introduce yourself and then we'll start the timer.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is James Bunting, and I'm a lawyer with the law firm Tier LLP. For the committee's records, I'm joined in the room I'm in today by my colleagues Jason Wadden and Eileen Church Carson, and we're also joined virtually by our co-counsel at the esteemed firm of McInnes Cooper, Ms. Jane O'Neill and Mr. Michael Richards. And together, to your last point, we represent a large and growing group of Canadians who own residential property in Nova Scotia.
Wonderful, thank you. And you have 5 minutes and your time starts now.
Thank you. Members of the committee, the group that we represent consider themselves to be part of the fabric of Nova Scotia. It's a group who contributes year after year to Nova Scotia's economy and community, even though they do not live in the province a majority of the time. It's a group of Canadians who are deeply hurt by the province's draconian, and we say disproportionate, non-resident deed transfer and property taxes in Bill 149. It is a group who hopes their concerns will be heard, a group who are committed to protecting their rights as Canadians, and a group that is prepared, if it must, to challenge the constitutional validity of these taxes through legal means. In the short time available to me today, I will discuss why the proposed taxes are unconstitutional. The proposed taxes, in our view, breach both sections 6 and 15 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Members of the committee, for almost 40 years to the day, our country has recognized charter enshrined rights for individuals to move freely within this country. Section 6.2a of the Charter provides, and I quote, that every citizen of Canada and everyone who has the status of a permanent resident of Canada has the right to move to and take up residence in any province. Canadian charter rights are interpreted broadly and purposefully. Our right as Canadians to take up residence is not limited to one province at a time, and there is nothing in the Charter that suggests or imposes such a limit. In fact, such a limit is not only at odds with a fair and broad reading of Section 6.2a of the Charter, but it would be inconsistent with the concept of federalism, which underlies our great nation. Section 6.2a of the Charter reflects the freedom afforded to all Canadians to move to and take up residence anywhere in the country without discrimination. Some of the people we represent were born and raised in Nova Scotia, but work or personal circumstances prevent them from spending a majority of their time in Nova Scotia. But each of them very much considers Nova Scotia home. Other members of the group we represent were born and raised outside of Nova Scotia, but fell in love with the province after visiting. They return to it regularly and have become Nova Scotians at heart, so much so that they have set down roots in the province by purchasing a home. All of the people we represent contribute to the culture, economy, and fabric of Nova Scotia. They are valuable members of society, even if they are not able to be physically present the majority of their time in Nova Scotia. The proposed taxation measures, which I'm hearing referred to colloquially as the discrimination tax, erect a barrier to Canadians and permanent residents moving to and taking up residence in Nova Scotia. This breaches Section 6.2a of the Charter. The discrimination tax also has the effect of discriminating against individuals in breach of Section 15 of the Charter. We are one people, and we should not and cannot differentiate among Canadians by creating two classes of people, those who are able to live in Nova Scotia a majority of their time and those who are not. Indeed, many Nova Scotians live a majority of the year outside of Nova Scotia because of necessities arising from employment or family circumstances. It was hard enough for these individuals to leave Nova Scotia in the first place. And this government now proposes to tear them out of the fabric of Nova Scotia altogether, because that is what we say this discrimination tax will do. It will force many Canadians, no, Nova Scotians,
1 minute,
whether by birth or at heart, to sell their homes in Nova Scotia. I will use one example in the time left to me. What if Sidney Crosby, Nathan McKinnon, or the Nova Scotia Olympians and Paralympians who spend the majority of their time outside of the province they call home because they are competing or training? Are these heroes not Nova Scotian enough to call Nova Scotia home? And it's not just athletes. There are many more everyday heroes that have received the same message from this proposed tax. They are champions of industry, students, and many others who in the pursuit of education or a career have, at least for now, spend a majority of their time away from the place they call home. We recognize Nova Scotia is grappling with housing affordability concerns. We are not deaf to that issue, but this is not the way. Nova Scotians represent the best of the Canadian spirit. Let that spirit guide this government now and strike the discrimination tax from Bill 149. This tax has no place here because it does not reflect Nova Scotian values.
Thank you very much for your comments. I will go and ask if there are any questions of committee members, and I would recognize MLA Clark, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Bunting, thank you for your time there and for your colleagues as well, who I know are there. And it's really helpful for us to get the perspective, the legal perspective on this as well. Obviously, we've been hearing from a lot of homeowners, which is incredibly valuable, but the legal side of things is really important too. So I'm just wondering if you could give us a sense, if you're aware, is there any regime or tax system in other provinces or territories that is analogous to this proposal in any way? Thank you.
Honourable Member, we're speaking today about a proposed tax in Nova Scotia, not some other law with different words passed by a different parliament in a different province. Whether some other law in any other province may also breach the Charter isn't an issue that's before you for discussion. This is about Nova Scotia and why the proposed tax here breaches the Charter, both Section 6 and Section 15.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? MLA Tilley.
Thank you, Mr. Bunting, for your presentation. And, you know, the example that you used of the professional athletes and being away from their home, I think was a very good example, given the fact that, you know, for whatever reason, our home is our home, and we, you know, we always want to maintain that connection. So a tax like this, which, you know, which in my opinion penalizes especially Nova Scotians who you know, have had to move for various reasons and want to maintain that connection to their home community, to their parents, to their families and friends. So just wondering what you're hearing from your clients with regards to how they're feeling about Nova Scotia, how they're feeling about further investing in their properties, and you know, what do you think these folks are going to have to do? Are they going to sell? Are they going to, you know, and can they sell?
So the common underlying theme would be deep frustration and hurt. All of the people we represent consider themselves Nova Scotians, and they feel like they're being unfairly and unceremoniously discriminated against. The proposed measures from their perspective may put more money in government's pocket, but it won't put more money into the communities. These are individuals and families that contribute greatly to the fabric of the community, both economically and personally. And they feel like this tax will, to your point, have the effect of expropriating their land because they are not going to be able to maintain it, or at least some of them will be able to maintain it, and they will sell. And for those who do sell, it may well be in rural Nova Scotia at substantially reduced values because of the reduced market. None of that, in our view, achieves the objectives that this legislation is intended to address, and it's deeply concerning. I would simply say the last comment we've heard from our client group is that they are feeling a loss of their Nova Scotian identity because of the way this tax has been put forward quickly in a rushed manner, without, in their view, fair or proper consultation, and in a way that is both hurtful and discriminatory.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to our next presenter, Jennifer Scott Dexter. Hi, how are you today?
Hello.
Good.
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Good, thank you. So you're presenting on Bill 149, the Financial Measures Act. I would ask that, just for the record, if you could identify for the committee your name as well as how you would like to be addressed by committee members, any organizations if you represent any, or if you're just here on your own behalf. And then you will have 5 minutes to address committee. I will let you know when you have 1 minute left just by saying one into the microphone, and then committee members will have up to 5 minutes to ask questions if they would like to. So if you could just identify yourself, and then we'll start things off.
My name's Jennifer Scott Dexter. I reside in Cape May County, New Jersey, and in the summertime in Somerville Center, Queens County, Nova Scotia. You may call me Jennifer.
Whenever you're ready, thank you.
Yes, well, and I'm like many others that you've heard from over the past several days, Thursday and today. My family landed in Liverpool, Nova Scotia, Queens County in the early 1700s. My fourth uncle, Uncle Enoch Dexter, fourth great uncle, built what is now the oldest building in Liverpool, formerly known as the Dexter Tavern in the early 1700s. And my great-great-grandfather, Isaac Vincent Dexter, helped found the Baptist Church in Brooklyn, was also a preacher, and we also had a Dexter boatyard in Brooklyn, and we built 15 ships, and Isaac Vincent Dexter also served as an MLA during his lifetime. So we have always been proud of our Nova Scotian heritage, and that was always impressed upon us growing up. My grandfather was born in Brooklyn in 1892. My grandmother was born in Tupperville Valley in 1892 as well. My grandfather built our seasonal cottage in Nova Scotia, in Somerville, on one of the first properties that was purchased. He built it with his very own hands. It took him 2 summers to build it. And all of our years and all of our generations have inherited that family property since that time. It's never left our family hands, and we've all spent our summers there growing up. With the exception of the pandemic year, which we all completely respected and understood, we've spent at least a portion of our summers in Somerville. We stay as long as we can. Our cottage is uninsulated like many others. My grandchildren will be the 5th generation to come to this cottage. And through my lifetime, this has been my most consistent home. I mean, my longest childhood friends are in Nova Scotia, that we were babies together playing on the beach. We were always impressed growing up about what the things we needed to learn as Canadians and Nova Scotians were. I went to Y Camp in Yarmouth, Camp Wabana. I learned how to survival training and portage and use the canoe and archery and swimming and rescue. My father spent a whole summer. We had to learn how to tie knots so we could tie up our boat, which was not a luxury yacht. It was a Cape Islander fishing boat. We still have no TV in our cottage. We had a party line telephone while my siblings and I were young, and then it was taken out because this is a cottage for rest and peace and solace. And we had lots of music, though, lots and lots of music. In 2015, I began in earnest to try to move to Nova Scotia and work in Nova Scotia because it is I identify as being Canadian, and I'm Hawaiian and Canadian, and I feel Canadian most because that's my home, and it has been my home, as I said, my most consistent home. Still, no Wi-Fi in the cottage. It's a place for rest and solace. My career is in broadcasting. I'm on the radio in Atlantic City here in New Jersey. I talk to a lot of people every day for over 30 years. I've always been an advocate for Nova Scotia. All my listeners know that I go to Nova Scotia in the summer. People have called me and asked me for information and asked me where to go. And I gladly always speak about Nova Scotia in my 35 years. So every year I'm on my own. It's just me. I support myself. This is going to be a really hard thing for me to maintain. I hang on every single year to get there. And while I've tried since 2015 to get a paying job and to work and contribute more to my friends and family in my Somerville village,
1 minute.
where we've grown up, thank you. My job is not an in-demand job. As a matter of fact, I'm lucky to have this job where I am. On the air and broadcasting is not something that very many people do, but I have a microphone and I'm a great advocate for Nova Scotia. Right now, I feel bewildered and heartbroken, and I just feel unwanted for all the years that we've spent there in our village, contributing, using local help, all of our family and friends. I just don't know how I'm going to get along if I'm not able to do this. I might be able to do this for a couple of years, but I'm still working, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do it when I hopefully can retire, which I was hoping to volunteer my efforts. I can do many, many things. And I was hoping to be able to do that for more than a period of 3 weeks or 4 weeks in the summertime. So thank you for letting me speak before you today, and I appreciate your time.
And thank you very much. That was perfect timing because we've just reached the 5-minute mark. So I will now ask if there are any questions of committee members. MLA Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Jennifer, thank you for your time in your presentation. And one thing that's struck me, this is the second day I've been here on this bill in particular, 2 to 3 hours, I guess, in total at this point, is again, the connection, the deep connections that many people have going back centuries, in your case, to the area in which you spend a lot of time. And also the disconnect between what the government says this bill is designed to do and what I think it will actually do. So just want to clarify, Jennifer, the property that you have here in Nova Scotia is not suitable really in any way for any kind of long-term permanent habitation, correct?
Correct. It's not heated, it's not insulated, it's not winterized. We stay as long as we can. My brother stays through November, but they're cold weather people. So.
MLA Tilley.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and you know, your family has strong roots here to Nova Scotia, and I'm sure over the years that that you've spent not only significant time but significant money and in Nova Scotia and specifically in Somerville. And it's your career is very interesting as a broadcaster. We can certainly use, as Nova Scotians, we can use all of the publicity that we can get for sure to bring people to our beautiful province. I guess my question would be, you know, given the fact that you are kind of an on-air personality and are able to endorse the province, how will this make you feel about doing that in the future, knowing that as a long-time resident and as a long-time Nova Scotian, that sort of the province has turned its back on you?
Well, personally, I'm on during the day, and I do play music, and my show is a happy join Jen during the day kind of show. So I really don't dwell on anything that's negative. However, since this has come up, and it's only been a week or 10 days, as I said, I'm totally bewildered. So I would never speak badly of Nova Scotia. I would never, ever do that because I love it so much. However, that's all I have to say about that. I would never speak badly about it, but I do feel bewildered and heartbroken, and I kind of feel like I'm not wanted. And for so much, it's just such a surprise to feel that way. And I'm very sad. I'm very sad.
MLA Tilley.
Thank you for that, Jennifer, and I can certainly understand those feelings. And reading through your submission that you provided to us, which was very well done and very get you in the heart. You have a question at the very end that talks about will there be a public meeting or information session on this issue? And the answer to that is no. Of course, this law amendments is the only way for residents to voice their opinion. So thank you for being here to do that. And as my colleague had mentioned, you know, the idea behind this bill, I think, is noble in the fact that, you know, we're concerned about housing. There's a housing crisis, but I think it's actually maybe a little bit too rushed and ill-conceived, because the benefits from this bill will certainly bring more revenue to the province, but it won't actually solve the problem of providing more housing, especially in the area where you're dealing with a cottage that's not insulated, that's not winterized, and not able to be using as a year-round residence. You can't even rent it
No,
in the months when you're not here. Yeah, so I think maybe some further consultation, and I understand there are also a large number of former residents that want to speak to the bill, but
Thank you. That's time. Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much for presenting with us today. Have a wonderful
Thank you
rest
for
of the
allowing
day.
me to do that. Thank you.
Just before we do bring on our next speaker, I would let committee members know our first speaker on our list today was not able to, we weren't able to connect with them, so we've moved number 1 down and will be added on as number 13. Moving on now to our next speaker, Sherry Bonell.
Hello. Thank you for allowing me to speak and for pronouncing my name correctly.
Oh my goodness, I got one right. Thank you very much for joining us today. If you could just identify yourself for the record, please, and if you would let committee members know how you would like to be addressed, and if you're here representing any organizations or if you're here on your own. And you will then have 5 minutes to address the committee. I'll let you know when there's a minute left. I'll just say 1 so that you know there's 1 minute left. And then you'll have members have up to 5 minutes follow-up questions if they choose to ask.
Okay.
So if you'll identify yourself, and then we'll start your timer.
Okay. So my name is Sherry Bonell, and I am representing myself and my husband and daughters. So we're not representing any sort of organization.
Okay, I will start the timer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we were quite surprised when we heard the latest budget that rolled out in Nova Scotia, specifically with regard, of course, to this additional tax that is being proposed for out-of-province property owners. So we bought our property in early September 2019 and have been coming to Chester Basin to stay with my aunt and uncle for 30 years. So obviously have spent a lot of time in the area and love it. But as they got older and our family got bigger, it made sense for us to purchase a place so that we could enjoy it with our family and our friends. And we have put a lot of money into the community and into that property since we've been there. So when I went through all my records, the amount that we've put in since September 2019 is in excess of $118,000. That's furniture, mortgage, insurance, all of those kind of things, as well as work that we've done to the property. We have friends that come and stay with us and have since we purchased the property. We've had 2 family friends who have been able to stay at our place for extended periods. They were moving from out of province, but hadn't already purchased a property, so stayed at our place until they were able to purchase a property. So both of them have now moved to Nova Scotia. Our kids have gone to Sherbrooke Lake Camp, since they were 5 years old. They go to sailing camp in Lunenburg. We make donations to the Chester Brass Band, to our health center in Chester. We purchase, we go to restaurants, we are about to make an investment into a new venture capital fund that is specifically based on the east coast of Nova Scotia for tech startups. And between us and our friends, that amount is going to be for at least $400,000. So I think the thing that I'm having difficulty wrapping my head around, and my husband as well, is it feels like we are being unfairly penalized when we are absolutely putting money back into the community of Nova Scotia, not just on the South Shore, but throughout all of Nova Scotia. And, you know, obviously, if we're going to be continuing to stay there, an extra, you know, $9, $10, $11, $12,000 a year is a significant amount of money. We love it there, but that is cost prohibitive to us. And what that means is that if we have those additional costs, we can't necessarily continue to be investing in our property and supporting the trades and, you know, the restaurants, the vets that we go to, the tours that we take. That money has to come from somewhere. And to be quite honest, we haven't been putting money into our home in Ontario since we purchased our property in Nova Scotia. So, you know, I know that you're hearing from a lot of people, and they're out of country people, out of province people. It seems like we're the easy target to fund the homeless issue. We have the same issue in Ontario. Okay. So we completely understand it. It just seems to us that we aren't the ones who have created the issue, and there seems to be other opportunities to make a more fair solution rather than taxing the people who are out of province. And that is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your presentation. I'll go to committee members. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate. Sorry, MLA Tilley.
Thank you, Sherry, for the great presentation. And it's wonderful to hear of your investment in startups here in Nova Scotia. I'm from Cape Breton, and the tech sector is very much alive in Cape Breton, and there are lots of great startups there. So thank you so much for doing that. It's great. And so now, you know, based on that, you're investing in the community, you're investing in business, you're trying to help Nova Scotia grow.
Yes.
And now you're being saddled with a significant tax grab that will potentially force you to either sell or to not contribute to the economy as much as possible. So just wondering, you know, what your feeling is amongst, you mentioned you have some investing, an investment venture capital group. Just wondering what the feeling is about the ability to do business in Nova Scotia now that this new tax has been identified.
Well, I mean, we're super excited about this opportunity. So it was brought to us by our friends who both work in the tech industry in Nova Scotia. They came from Ontario, moved to St. Margaret's Bay 7 or 8 years ago. So we were very happy to have the opportunity to invest in this, and have spoken with many of our friends about it. And that's why we have, you know, the additional momentum of other people investing as well. So we're very excited to be investing in the tech industry. And these are all startups that we're hoping are going to be successful, obviously. And if they're all in Nova Scotia, that would be, you know, great. So like anybody else, there is not a never ending, you know, fountain of money that we have. And so where we feel like we would need to cut back would be in doing other things in the community, including if, you know, our property is based on the assessed value and we're having to pay an extra $10,000. Are we going to put in another $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 that is going to increase the appraised value on the property? Why would we do that? You know, so it seems a little bit short-sighted to me. And I feel, you know, I believe there are other opportunities, and it's not like the people from out of province are not bringing money into Nova Scotia, right?
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for your comments. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Moving on now to our next presenter, Robert Griffin.
Hello.
Hi, welcome. I welcome you to speak today on Bill number 149, the Financial Measures Act. If you would be able to identify yourself for the record, as well as how you would like committee members to address you. And if you're presenting on your own behalf or on behalf of an organization, that would be good too. I will then have 5 minutes to address the committee. I will let you know when there's 1 minute left by just saying one into the microphone, and then you'll have potentially 5 minutes for follow-up of committee members. So if you would just identify yourself, and then we'll start your timer.
Okay, first of all, can you hear me fine?
We can, yep, thank you.
Okay, Robert Griffin, presenting on behalf of myself. I reside in London, Ontario, and also have a property in the Mahone Bay region. Just before I start, I also want to make sure that the committee has a copy of my, email, but more importantly, a copy of a PDF of the slides, which I thought I was going to present this morning, but I guess that was not possible to do the PowerPoint presentation.
Just for clarification, is this the PDF?
The PDF was, in terms of, they told me they were going to distribute this morning, was a PDF of the actual slides. The slides should be titled The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
We do, yes we do, sir. So with that, I'll start the timer.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to thank the committee again for the opportunity to speak this morning. As I said, I wanted to express some of my concerns regarding Bill 149, and I would like to do that with my talk titled The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, or I guess more directly, Good People, Bad Decisions, Ugly Consequences. I always believed I was a Nova Scotian. I was born in Amherst as a 9th generation descendant of Simon Griffin. But all that changed on April 1st of 2022. My wife and I are now Nova Scotians, and it comes with a significant price tag. We find ourselves between a rock and a hard place with no viable employment opportunities for an academic orthopedic surgeon, and my wife is not keen about becoming the sole breadwinner as an emergency medicine physician to raise our 5 children and to fund our retirement. I'm completely opposed to the Clause 10 in the Financial Measures Act of 2022. It's discriminatory in nature. I find it extremely punitive in both measure and scope, and it was poorly designed. It's extremely divisive, especially to all those who love Nova Scotia, and will be harmful to the long-term economic growth and prosperity, especially in rural and smaller municipalities. These concerns have been highlighted by Nova Scotia residents, opinion columnists, business owners, and other presenters to the LAC. These deliberations have already damaged the Nova Scotia brand. They have alienated true provincial ambassadors with feelings of shock, hurt, anger, insult, and betrayal. And although they are not as prominent or famous as the Blue Nose 2, their magnitude is significant and there are many ports of call all over the world. It would be a grave error to financially coerce these individuals to abandon their Nova Scotia roots. Like many places in Canada, Nova Scotia is facing significant issues. It needs to address housing shortages, especially in the problematic area of the Halifax region. Furthermore, it needs to improve its healthcare system capacity, and these capacity limitations were at the forefront during the pandemic, requiring extended shutdowns of the economy in Nova Scotia and across Canada. However, I would suggest that the majority of non-resident property owners in Nova Scotia are significant investors of their money, time, and energy, especially in smaller municipalities, and have remained loyal in both good times and bad times, and many have done so for generations. I too am an investor and purchased vacant land in 2002. I paid HST and uncapped municipal taxes ever since. 5 years ago, we added considerable capital to our investment and thereby contributing to the provincial GDP with further development of the property That investment, of course, has expectedly led to increases in our uncapped municipal taxes. Similar to myself, I think non-property resident owners in Nova Scotia are great contributors to the GDP. They pay a reasonable share of taxes for the time that is spent. That's in the municipal level for uncapped property assessments, provincial level for HST and goods and services, and also personal income via the Federal Equalization Payments Program, as a majority of non-residents are believed to be from Ontario. And furthermore, they're not burdens to the overstretched healthcare system. I also would suggest these non-residents are not too dissimilar from Nova Scotia snowbirds, and their net financial contributions could be potentially higher as they provide no cost to the healthcare system. Total joints are very expensive, and they're not adding to the list of Nova Scotians without a family doctor. Other factors deserve consideration. 22% of homeowners in Nova Scotia own 41% of the residential real estate. 1/5 of these multiple homeowners held properties in the same consensus area as their metropolitan area. These many individuals benefit immensely from the capped assessment program. Further data is desperately needed. It may be time to revisit the cap. It is the property tax system. It started with best intentions, but it's evolved into a poorly designed tax break. It shifts more tax on first-time home buyers. Seniors want to downsize. Federal employees, RCMP, and military that are required to move work, and it needs to be revised for tax fairness. In summary, I would suggest that we stop targeting non-property owners in isolation for issues that the majority had minimal impact in creating. Drop Clause 10 of the Financial Measure Act until further data information is obtained, as it's extremely punitive and discriminatory in nature. Roll out new legislation only after proper data collection, seeking consultation with municipalities and other stakeholders, and create new municipal tax assessment program that is progressive and fair. Thank you for your time and opportunity. And I think I must have double pressed and missed one slide based on the ministry, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much for your comments with 4 seconds left to go. Ask if there's any questions of committee members. MLA Lachance.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm wondering, you talked a bit about other proposals around the municipal tax assessment program and others, and if you want to take a couple more minutes to speak to that, that would be great.
Just could you clarify what specific goal?
The new municipal tax assessment program that you referenced.
Oh, I just think that the current cap system obviously needs to be revised. Obviously, with the number of individuals that own multiple properties in the province that potentially are getting, I guess, capped assessment programs, it certainly leaves municipalities with less municipal tax to deal with some of the issues that they have to deal with. I certainly understand the reasoning behind the tax, and I certainly have never really been opposed to the uncapped portion that I pay, understanding that there's differences between property owners. That being said, I think if you're going to move towards paying additional tax on top of an uncapped assessment, I think the PEI method, where everybody pays the same tax and then you put a surcharge or premium on non-property owners, would be a much more fair way to do it. So I don't think there's currently a new municipal tax. I would suggest they look at that, because I think the cap program needs to be revised.
Any other questions? Thank you very much. I'm sorry, MLA Clark does have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Griffin, for your comments today. And I appreciate the attachments you included as well, from the municipality of Chester and from the Minister of Economic Development as well, which I thought was quite interesting. And the striking thing to me when I look at these things and contrast them is that from the municipality, from yourself, from many of our other presenters, we're seeing actually some data, some numbers, some thoughtful suggestions about what might work. And we have the Minister of Economic Development saying about this policy, this is something that has been thoughtfully developed, including full consideration of the economic and social impacts. And yet we have the Finance Minister saying he doesn't know if this is going to actually work or not. So I think there's some mixed messaging here. And so I just wanted to thank you for your thoughtfulness on this, which I think is really important when we're talking about something as complicated as tax policy. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, I guess my response, I guess, a little bit is, and I commend the province for what they're trying to do. And as a healthcare provider, I think our, Canada Health Act also needs to be revised in the sense that I'm a huge proponent of public health care, but I think we are starting to see the limitations of just raising taxes to fund the system. And in a province such as Nova Scotia with a smaller population with less physicians, I think they have an opportunity to be leaders to try to figure out how they can fund a healthcare system going forward that involves both public money, but also private money. And like, again, I want to protect the public healthcare system, but I do think we have to look at other avenues, and it's just not based on personal tax. And I think it's the same thing with the housing shortage. Hopefully, some of the things that the government's currently doing, hopefully with the raising of monetary policy and those types of things, will have positive benefits to change it. But I think it's just short-sighted when we just come out with a tax such as this, that they really haven't decided what kind of revenue it's going to generate. They still don't have adequate information in terms of the database. And I think they're just targeting individuals based on maybe potentially bad perception. So like I say, I welcome your comments, and hopefully it will give some consideration for further thought before moving these measures forward.
Thank you very much for your presentation today, and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.
I have been notified by Legislative Council that they are not able to reach the first speaker, so that is our last speaker on our list. I will recognize MLA Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to close public hearing on Bill 149, the Financial Measures Act, and I ask that the question now be put.
We do have a motion on the floor and a request to have that now be put. So all those in favor signify with aye. Those opposed, nay. Thank you. And I will recognize MLA LaChance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a proposed amendment to the Financial Measures Act that I'd like to put before the committee. One of the things that I found interesting in listening to folks reading in the papers, that sort of thing, is that there is this assumption that this is directly tied to addressing the affordable housing crisis. And so we'd like to support strengthening the bill to make that the case. So I can read the amendment. It's being distributed right now. So I'll start reading slowly. On page 14 of the schedule, to add immediately before proposed section 16 of the following section 16, revenues from all taxes levied by the minister under this act, A, must be kept separate from the general revenue fund, and B, may only be spent on programs and initiatives related to non-market affordable housing, and then to renumber and change cross-references accordingly.
Thank you, MLA LaChance. We have a question on the floor. I'll go to MLA Chender for discussion.
Thanks to my colleague for bringing this. Just to, I guess, add a little bit to what she said. I think one of the successes we have seen in the last couple of years is government spending from the Green Fund. And that is a fund that comes directly from our efforts under the federal system with our Made in Nova Scotia solution that says that all revenues from our cap and trade go into the Green Fund, directed spending. So we tax climate issues and then we spend to mitigate them. And so while there are lots of questions about this act in general, knowing that it is likely to pass, the amendment that we suggest is that since it is being put forward as something to address the housing crisis, and whereas we have big questions about whether or not the act in itself does that, we're asking the government to actually be clear with that proposal and to direct the funds raised into specifically affordable non-market housing. This would accomplish what the government says it's setting out to accomplish and seems to be in keeping with the spirit of the act. And so we would ask that our colleagues support this amendment.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor, Amendment LAC NDP 1. I would ask those in favor signify with aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Thank you. MLA Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I now move that we move Bill 149, the Financial Measures Act 2022, and report it back to the House without amendment.
A motion on the floor. All those in favor, aye. Those opposed, nay. That concludes our business today. Thank you very much, members. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you at 1.